first person you betray when you lower your standards is yourself. And the first person you abandon when you refuse to enforce your boundaries is also yourself. Most people think boundaries are rules you impose on other people, but that's not really what they are. Boundaries exist to protect the kind of person you are trying to become. In the last video, I talked about self-respect and discipline. Those are the inner forces that move your life forward. Standards and boundaries are the outer rails that keep you on track. The problem is that most people never stop to define them. They drift. They move through life reacting to whatever is around them. They fall into habits, friendships, routines, and environments without ever really asking themselves a simple question. Is this helping me become the person I want to be? When I left university, I knew I wanted to do some kind of humanitarian work. But beyond that, I hadn't really thought deeply about the man I wanted to become. I hadn't thought about the kind of people I wanted around me. I hadn't thought clearly about what success meant for me, either personally or professionally. So I drifted into life. I carried on many of the same habits I had built in my teenage years and in university. I partied, I drank, I chased the next big night out. And because everyone around me was doing the same thing, it all felt normal. It felt like living. It felt like freedom. It felt like making memories. But looking back now, I can barely remember most of it. A few moments stand out here and there, a few funny stories, a few blurred fragments of nights that once seemed important, but most of it meant nothing. What I do remember clearly are the hard fought things, the periods where I trained properly, the periods where I improved myself, the times I built something, learned something, or pushed through discomfort and came out stronger. Those memories stay with you because they meant something. And that's one of the hardest lessons people have to learn. There is a big difference between pleasure and fulfillment. Pleasure is easy. It's the drink, the junk food, the night out, the laugh, the distraction, the quick dopamine hit. It feels good for a moment, but it doesn't build anything. Fulfillment is different. Fulfillment usually asks something from you first. It comes from sacrifice, effort, discipline, discomfort, and staying with something long enough for it to become real. It doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it gives you something deeper. It builds confidence. It builds self-respect. It builds character. A lot of people stay stuck in empty cycles because they are avoiding something. When the noise dies down, when the party is over, when the distractions disappear, you are left alone with yourself. And if you haven't built a life with any real substance, that can feel uncomfortable. There's a quote I once heard that stuck with me. The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. That line is brutally true. The first thing you keep putting off, the discipline you keep resisting, the discomfort you keep avoiding, that is often exactly where your growth is. For me, there was another layer to this as well. Looking back, I can now see that I was struggling with neurodiversity long before I understood it. A lot of social situations felt draining or confusing to me. I struggled with unwritten rules, the little signals, the formal settings, the strange social dance that other people seem to navigate naturally. But in the chaos of nightlife, that all became less visible. In those environments, everything was looser, more impulsive, less structured. I could move between groups and situations without feeling that pressure to perform socially in a precise way. At the time, it felt liberating. It felt like I had found somewhere I belonged. But looking back, I can see that it wasn't true belonging. It was escape. There's a big difference between belonging somewhere and temporarily escaping the feeling that you don't belong. And that's one of the hidden dangers of a lifestyle built around distraction. It doesn't just waste time, it delays self-discovery. If you spend years drowning out your thoughts with stimulation, noise, alcohol, chaos, and constant movement, you make it harder and harder to actually understand yourself. And then one day you wake up in your 30s, maybe even later, and you realize that you've never really stopped to ask what you wanted your life to be. That is the real cost, not just wasted nights, wasted clarity. And the people around you, they matter enormously here because your standards are shaped by your environment. If you spend all your time around people who live for the next drink, the next distraction, the next hit of excitement, that becomes normal. If you spend all of your time around people who avoid responsibility, drift through life, and never demand more of themselves, that also becomes normal. And if you're not careful, you begin to shape yourself to fit whatever room you spend the most time in. That is why standards matter. Standards are not about becoming rigid or self-righteous. They are about deciding what kind of life you are willing to build, and what kind of life you are no longer willing to tolerate. It means asking yourself real questions. Who do I want to be? What kind of life do I want to build? What kind of people do I want around me? What am I willing to sacrifice to get there? Because every choice has a cost. The time you spend on meaningless distraction is time you could have spent building something meaningful. The energy you waste on people who drain you is energy that could have gone into your own growth. The years you spend drifting are years you do not get back. And if you do not define your standards for yourself, the world will define them for you, usually badly, usually cheaply, usually in a way that leads toward comfort, conformity, and mediocrity. Boundaries are what protect those standards. They are the lines you draw around your time, your energy, your health, your relationships, and your peace of mind. They are not there to control other people. They are there to stop you from betraying yourself. If you know you're at your best when you train, sleep properly, and stay focused, then your boundaries should protect that. If you know that certain people bring out the worst in you, drain your energy, or constantly belittle your goals, then your boundaries should protect you from that too. Sometimes boundaries are dramatic. Most of the time, they are not. Most boundaries are quiet. Leaving early, saying no, not replying, not going back, choosing not to explain yourself endlessly, choosing not to tolerate what you already know is wrong for you. And here is something important. People will often react badly when you start enforcing boundaries. They may guilt trip you, mock you, accuse you of changing, act like you think you are too good for them. But often that reaction tells you exactly why the boundary was needed in the first place. Some people only feel comfortable with the version of you that has no standards, because that version of you is easy to access, easy to influence, easy to use. Raise your standards and you begin to filter people. At first, that can feel lonely. Your social circle may shrink, old habits may fall away, certain environments may stop feeling like home. But over time, something better happens. You begin to attract people who respect themselves, people who value honesty, effort, discipline, and growth, people who do not need you to stay small in order to feel comfortable. That is one of the hidden rewards of standards. They sort your life. Now, this does not mean you should cut people off at the first sign of difficulty. Not everything difficult is toxic. Some relationships are worth working on. Some jobs are worth fighting for. Some situations demand patience, effort, humility, and uncomfortable conversations. Growth often includes friction, but there is a difference between something being difficult and something being harmful. The difference matters. If a person, a workplace, or a situation repeatedly violates your standards, repeatedly damages your peace, repeatedly disrespects your effort, nothing changes no matter how many chances you give it, then walking away is not a weakness. It is self-respect. And walking away does not have to be dramatic. It can be calm, quiet, final. One of the biggest mistakes people make is staying too long in places that are slowly eroding them. They stay because they fear conflict. They stay because they fear loneliness. They stay because they fear starting over. But the price of staying somewhere that keeps wounding your self-respect is often far higher than the price of leaving. I've had to learn this in my own life. For a long time, I thought being easygoing was a virtue in itself. I thought staying quiet, absorbing things, overlooking small acts of disrespect, and pushing through discomfort without saying anything made me mature. What I didn't realize was that all of those small, ignored boundary crossings were building up inside me, and eventually they would come out in a way that looked explosive. Sometimes something small would happen, I would react as though it was huge, but the reaction wasn't really about that one moment. It was about the long accumulation of small moments I had failed to address. For a long time, I blamed myself for that. I thought the solution was simply to control my anger better. Eventually, I realized the real solution was earlier than that. The real solution was to stop ignoring the small boundary crossings in the first place. Address them early, speak clearly, walk away if necessary. Because when you repeatedly allow people to cross your boundaries, you are not just harming yourself, you are also allowing the situation to build until it becomes worse for everyone. This is why boundaries bring peace. They reduce mental noise, they reduce resentment, they reduce second guessing. When your standards are clear, you stop arguing with yourself over the same things again and again. You know what you accept. You know what you do not accept. You know what kind of life you are building. That clarity is powerful. And it doesn't make life smaller. It actually makes life richer. Because when your standards are clear and your boundaries are solid, you can fully enjoy the things you do choose. You can be present. You can relax. You can have fun without guilt. You can invest in the right people without constantly fearing that you are abandoning yourself in the process. Your standards will also evolve over time. What mattered at 18 may not matter at 35. New responsibilities will come, new ambitions will emerge, new seasons of life will demand different boundaries. That is not inconsistency, that is maturity. The point is not to create a rigid set of rules and never change them. The point is to live consciously enough that your standards actually reflect the life you are trying to build now. At the end of the day, standards and boundaries are not really about restriction. They are about identity. They are they are your way of saying, this is who I am. This is what matters to me. This is what I will protect. And if you do not decide those things for yourself, life will decide them for you, usually through pressure, through distraction, through convenience, through the expectations of other people. So decide for yourself. Choose your standards carefully. Protect them with boundaries. And understand this: every time you honor those boundaries, you reinforce your self respect. And every time you keep your standards intact, you strengthen the life you are building. And every time you refuse to betray yourself for comfort, approval, or convenience, you become stronger, clearer, more grounded. This is not restriction. This is freedom. Hope you enjoyed the video and you learned from it. Like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.